Hello, and welcome to Module 1.3 of Oregon's third-party verification training. This module presents an overview of our greenhouse gas reporting program. For any questions related to this training program, please contact DEQ at 3pverify@deq.oregon.gov. Today, we'll cover several key topics related to the greenhouse gas reporting program. We'll start with the basics of the reporting program, including its purpose and scope. We'll then discuss where to find the relevant regulations and outline the specific reporting requirements for each sector involved. We'll review the fundamentals of greenhouse gas monitoring plans, including their importance and implementation. We'll identify the reporting tools used in each sector and explain how they facilitate data submission. And finally, we'll provide information on the process for cessation of reporting and the verification requirements. Let's begin with an overview of the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program. The Environmental Quality Commission first approved Oregon's greenhouse gas reporting rules in 2009, and these rules have been updated several times since that time. The program mandates the annual collection of greenhouse gas emissions data and related information from the state's largest sources. These include industrial facilities with air quality permits, fuel importers, natural gas suppliers, electricity suppliers, and large landfills. The rules are designed to ensure comprehensive tracking and reporting of emissions across these key sectors. DEQ collects greenhouse gas emissions data from these sources for several important reasons. This data is essential for conducting emissions analysis that guides policy decisions across the state. It also helps us compile our statewide greenhouse gas inventory, which supports both current and future emission reduction regulations. Additionally, we ensure that this reported data is accessible to the public through our websites and data requests. Here's an example of how the data collected by the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program is utilized. This chart represents the statewide emissions inventory for Oregon, illustrating the relative proportions of anthropogenic emissions across major sectors from 1990 to 2021. On the x-axis, we see the timeline from 1990 to 2021, while on the y-axis, we see emissions in million metrics of tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. From the chart, it's clear that the transportation sector is the largest contributor to emissions in Oregon, followed by the electricity sector. Natural gas and agriculture also contribute significantly, but to a lesser extent. So why is verifying data reported to the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program essential? Independent third-party verification enhances the reliability of the data, ensuring that the businesses in Oregon accurately calculate their emissions and comply with DEQ reporting requirements. This verified data is crucial for research on the projected effects of climate change and for developing effective policy scenarios. Accurate data is not only important for current policies, but also for future regulations. Additionally, the data comes under public scrutiny, and various stakeholders expect it to reflect an accurate picture of emissions in Oregon. As market-based programs and stricter emission regulations are introduced, the data collected by the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program will continue to expand in scope and significance. Ensuring its accuracy remains critical to supporting informed decision-making and regulatory compliance. All of DEQ's regulations are codified in Oregon Administrative Rules, Chapter 340, which can be accessed on the Oregon Secretary of State's website. Specifically, the regulations for Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program are found in Division 215 of this Chapter 340. Division 215 outlines the emissions data and information that must be reported to DEQ by regulated entities. In addition to the regulatory text, we provide a range of explanatory materials on our website. These resources include plain language descriptions of reporting requirements to help users better understand the rules and their obligations. Each entity must report in compliance with the rules adopted under OAR Chapter 340, Division 215. Division 215 of the regulations includes the following. In the general requirements section, the initial section provides fundamental information such as definitions, applicability of the rules, and requirements related to change in ownership. They also outline general reporting obligations for registration, record keeping, reporting, deadlines, and associated fees. After this, you will see sector-specific requirements. These subsequent sections detail the requirements for different types of emission data reports, specifying what is needed for each sector that submits reports to the program. As mentioned on the previous slide, there are 5 sectors required to report under the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program. First, there's the permitted stationary sources. This sector includes air-permitted stationary facilities that report both process emissions and emissions from stationary combustion. Next is electricity suppliers. These are entities that provide electricity to retail customers in Oregon. We also have liquid fuel suppliers and in-state producers. This sector covers those involved in the supply and production of liquid fuels and propane in Oregon. Natural gas suppliers are companies supplying natural gas to end users in Oregon that must report. And finally, the petroleum and natural gas system sector. This sector involves reporting from systems related to petroleum and natural gas extraction, processing, and transport. Each sector has distinct reporting requirements and necessitates DEQ-approved verifiers with specialized expertise to perform verification services. In the following slides, we will provide additional detail on applicability for reporting in each individual sector. We'll start with air-permitted stationary sources. These are sources in Oregon holding an air contaminant discharge permit, ACDP, or Title V operating permit. These sources must report to the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program if they emit 2,500 metric tons or more of carbon dioxide equivalent during the previous calendar year. Electricity suppliers in Oregon must report greenhouse gas emissions and information related to the generation of electricity distributed to end users in the state. This obligation applies regardless of where the electricity was generated and includes electricity imported and the portion of electricity generated and delivered within Oregon. The reporting requirements vary depending on the type of electricity supplier. These types include investor-owned utilities, electricity service suppliers, consumer-owned utilities. Additionally, there are specific requirements in the rule for multi-jurisdictional utilities, asset controlling suppliers, and third parties reporting on behalf of a consumer-owned utility. Fuel suppliers and in-state producers must report the greenhouse gas emissions resulting from the complete combustion of all fuels they supply for use in Oregon. The Oregon Greenhouse Gas Reporting Rules apply to all Oregon licensed fuel sellers and dealers, and any entity distributing more than 5,500 gallons of certain tax-exempt fuels, or 10,500 gallons of propane. However, the annual reporting obligation is specifically for entities operating within the fuel distribution system. This includes a point of regulation known as a position holder. These are distributors who own and disperse fuel from Oregon terminal storage facilities. In-state fuel producers, which are companies that produce fuel within Oregon and supply it for use in the state. And then certain fuel importers operating outside of the bulk system, which includes distributors who import fuel into Oregon, often by truck or rail. Entities must report under the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program's natural gas suppliers and in-state producers sectors if they produce natural gas, compressed natural gas, or liquefied natural gas in Oregon, or import, sell, or distribute natural gas, compressed natural gas, or liquefied natural gas to end users in Oregon. This requirement applies to all supplier types, including local distribution companies or utilities, interstate pipelines, and facility owners or operators. Oregon currently has 3 local distribution companies and 3 interstate pipelines reporting to the program. In our last category, owners of petroleum and natural gas systems must report greenhouse gas emissions if they meet or exceed 2,500 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. This requirement applies to any entity that owns or operates a facility in Oregon containing segments of the petroleum and natural gas systems industry, as defined by the EPA's Environmental Protection Agency. This includes onshore petroleum and natural gas production, offshore petroleum and natural gas production, onshore natural gas processing, natural gas transmission compression, underground natural gas storage, liquefied natural gas storage, and import and export activities. Now that we've covered who is subject to the greenhouse gas reporting requirements, let's discuss the basics about what is reported. While data and reporting requirements vary by sector, all greenhouse gas reporting entities must submit an annual emissions data report. Here are some key reporting details. The report is for the year prior to the year in which it is due, referred to as the emissions data year. For example, entities will report 2023 emissions submitted in the year of 2024. Entities must report both anthropogenic and biogenic emissions, typically disaggregated within the report by source, as prescribed in the rule. Some sectors must report additional non-emissions data. For example, air contamination sources with emissions exceeding 25,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent must include a narrative explaining any increase or decrease in emissions of more than 5%. And natural gas suppliers must report information about end users. For the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program, entities currently report emissions data and related information only. Oregon's rules currently do not include reporting on compliance obligation for market-based programs or product output data. Every entity subject to the greenhouse gas reporting requirements and third-party verification must maintain a written greenhouse gas monitoring plan. Although DEQ does not collect these plans, they must be made available for verification to both DEQ and third-party verifiers upon request. The greenhouse gas monitoring plan must describe the processes and methods used to collect the data necessary for greenhouse gas calculations, outline the procedures and methods for quality assurance, maintenance, and repair of all continuous monitoring systems, flow meters, and other instruments. In addition, these rules prescribed additional requirements for electricity supplier GHG data monitoring plans in Division 215. DEQ has 2 different reporting tools for entities that report to the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program. For permitted stationary sources, electricity suppliers, natural gas suppliers, and natural gas systems, reporting and verification are handled through Your DEQ Online, DEQ's environmental data management system. For liquid fuel suppliers reporting to the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program, emissions data reporting and verification are completed through the Oregon Fuels Reporting System, which is also where fuel suppliers submit reporting for our Clean Fuels program. Verifiers working across sectors should be familiar with both tool types. This slide summarizes which DEQ reporting tools are used for which sectors in the programs, and also lists the dates that annual emissions data reports and verification statements are due to DEQ. Division 215 does allow regulated entities to cease reporting to DEQ under certain circumstances. When a regulated entity may cease reporting to DEQ depends on the sector under which they are regulated. Air contamination sources must submit emissions data reports indicating they emitted less than 2,500 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent annually in order to meet cessation requirements for 3 consecutive years. All other sectors under the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program, electricity suppliers, fuel suppliers, natural gas suppliers, and in-state producers must submit an emissions report for the year in which they cease operations in Oregon. Entities that meet the 25,000 metric ton carbon dioxide equivalent verification threshold in a given year must have their emissions data report verified for the following year, even if their emissions fall below the threshold. Once verified, they are not required to undergo verification again until their emissions exceed the threshold once more. Let's go over an example. In year 1, Company A reports 26,000 metric tons and is required to undergo verification. In year 2, Company A's emissions drop to 24,000 metric tons. Although below the threshold, verification is still required for this year. In year 3, Company A reports 23,000 metric tons and is not subject to verification as it remains below the threshold. However, in year 4, Company A's emissions increase to 26,000 metric tons again, reactivating the verification requirements for that year. Division 215 also outlines the record-keeping requirements for the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program. Entities subject to greenhouse gas reporting rules must retain records for 5 years. Entities subject to the third-party verification rules must retain their records for 7 years, and verifiers must keep verification documents for 7 years as well. The rule specifies the types of documentation that must be retained. In general, records should be comprehensive enough to allow for verification of emissions data reported to DEQ and any subsequent revisions. This concludes Module 1.3. Thank you for attending. If you have any questions about this course, please email us at 3pverify@deq.oregon.gov.